Good evening, guys. So I wanted to uh, come back in here and talk about the angle of the news articles that I presented to y'all earlier. I know that it sounded pretty harsh and abrasive, right? So um, I did that for a reason because there's power in the words that we choose to use. So when we're talking about things that happen in certain areas and we're talking about safety in our schools and keeping our schools safe, right? There's power in identifying where those school zones are. There's power in saying, this happened in a school zone. This is what happens when these types of things happen in our school zone. This is the type of response we see when that happens. Um, I could give you another example, but it's really personal. They wrote an article about my mom one time that the title of the article said crack addict murdered in Michigan. And for those of you who don't know, my mom was murdered when I was 2, and I was raised by my grandmother, who I also call mom, so I'll probably confuse everybody again in the future. But my biological mom was murdered when I was 2, and I found the article in the basement or in the bottom of her dresser drawer. So when I found that article and I read the title, no one had ever told me my mom did drugs. So there was a real big, like, mind-boggling thing there, and that I had to confront when I read those words because those words had power. So having um having the right words in an article is important. When we talk about change and how we adjust the situation, it's important, right? So in this headline, man dies from multiple gun wounds in Syracuse North Side shooting. What type of things do we get in response, right? Bunch of Democrat versus federal, a bunch of awful racist comments, right? And it's really generic gibberish. But what would happen if I jumped in here and started talking about how this is a school zone? And if we went and asked, I followed up with Jim Cecil at one of those police coverage things when he does those weekly conversations and asked, about this response in school zones. That's how we've kind of raised awareness so far and how we should continue to be raising awareness. I didn't share that last post the way I did to be a jackass. I did it as an example of how different the tone sounds when you hear that this happened, if this said that this happened within 1,500 feet of a school, then would the comments be different? Would the overall tone be different? Would the response be different? I mean, I would tend to think it is, or would be. We'd at least, you know, have what? Oh, your good night hug? Good night. Um, it's just words matter, right? And like I was able to um speak to a family at Franklin Elementary School because my goddaughter goes there. So, I talked to them this evening, and that school did not have a lockdown drill. That school did not have a stay in place drill, right? So, we know that police flooded the scene, but I do, if they caught them or what way they ran, not too sure at this point. And those are the things that make us, make me and Some other families wonder, what are the rules and policies here? What is the standard for when a school goes into a lockdown? Why are you guys yelling like that? Because it's hot. I see you have your light off. It's 10:30. You got to try to lay down. You guys are normally asleep 2 hours ago. Why are you looking at me? You have the fan on, your window's open. Shut the door and get in bed. I know. Such a horrible thing. You have school tomorrow. Remember, Dad's gonna be here early. Shut the door. But yeah, so what was I saying? Oh, yes, families at Franklin. The school didn't go into lockdown. So why not? And what is the standard there? And what is the expectation there? And when can we expect to hear communication from the school? And are those the same expectations all across the board? Who's setting those expectations? Do principals decide when to go into lockdown? Is there a standard expectation for all 36 schools? Like, those are the types of questions I have, and I think if this community got answers to some of those things or started asking those kinds of questions a little bit louder, we'd be able to repair some of the trust that we've lost in this community because it's a two-way street. And we could keep talking about trust and look at this whole thing about whether or not we're going to have cell phones in our schools and what a cell phone policy would look like. And if the government is going to intercede and say smartphone policies are not allowed in schools at all and try to enforce it across the state, right? So let's just forget the ability to enforce a cell phone policy in a school for a second. Like, let's just talk about our feelings and figure out why people may be for and against cell phone policies. So I personally prefer to have my kid have a cell phone. For one, my kid walks to and from school almost a mile a day, and she's only 9. So I need a way to be able to communicate with her during that 25-minute walk while I am at work or working here on the computer and clocked in and can't uh, do both at the same time. So, and there's a lot of other families who are in the same boat. They leave for work and their kids walk to school, or they leave, right, something similar to that. The second part of that is being able to contact your child directly when your kid is or when your school is in a lockdown and they have some type of emergency procedure to where the people in the office either don't answer the phone or they don't give any outsiders any information, right? Because that is our standard policy. They don't share things over the phone because they don't want to give misinformation, and they're always trying to contain, catch, and kill the stories and the situations, so they don't share any details. And that is really irritating and harmful to the relationship and the trust between parents and families. Because if there's something going on in the school or on that side of town, or for whatever reason, the kid can't get home, then you want to be able to communicate directly with your child. It's reassuring, it's comforting. You may, not want your kid to sit like a sitting duck, but let's not get too controversial tonight. So, those are some of the feelings around cell phones. I'm sure other families have other feelings. Bullying, problems with teachers, um, multiple co-parenting households. You might just need a phone to call you right after school, or there could be there's different things in the 21st century life to where parents like to have access to their kid if their kid's going to be away from them for 40 hours a week, but there's also a lot of drawbacks to that because it's causing a lot of problems in the classroom. Distractions, texting, increased bullying, increased fighting, recording fights, uploading it to the internet. So, where is the middle ground in this? Is there a room to get every, teacher a business phone, or should we be installing more phones and hardwire Ethernet jacks with our new fiber upgrade? So yeah, all classrooms have the ability to call out and they don't have to go down the hallway to call for help. So there's just some things to think about when it comes to phones, and there's a conversation that we need to have here because this problem isn't going away. So we have to navigate our feelings and we have to look at the facts and we have to figure out what those facts are. And the more transparent we are as we do that, the more likely we are to have a successful cell phone policy in general, right? Like if you had every parent or a parent from every school site, leading a meeting, having a conversation about cell phones, 3 meetings over 90 days, so everybody can come air it out. On 120 in 4 months, you present a final position of the school. All the 36 schools take turn the final positions into the parent council, and then the parent council goes and deliberates at their meeting for exactly what their expectations are and what they want. And if we give up our cell phones and if our kids turn in our cell phones, then the schools change their communication policies during emergencies. Or the schools change their communication policies only this much, but they release this much information on exactly what their standards are and how they act in certain examples of certain situations. Because let's not forget about the last couple incidents that happened at Fowler, right? So we had some mismatch communication there. But there's Fowler students, high school students, who are saying that two incidences happened that day. That yes, a kid got caught in the football field with a gun, but these kids are saying that there was actually a gun in the building and that somebody else got arrested. So, in that story, again, we see the Syracuse police responding in a timely manner to our school zone. They were able to communicate from outside the school into the school and get the school on a lockout. So there was no way any of those doors were going to be opened and nobody was moving and they knew exactly what was going on. And the police responded in a timely way and took care of the incident outside. But there's still, it's still up in the air whether or not there was another incident inside. If it's the incident inside, assumingly got caught and killed, right? They didn't release it. They didn't want to talk about it. They don't like when we make the district look bad. So I said we there, but I guess it's really just me. And I'm just gonna take that L because there's really serious things that we need to be looking at and deliberating on and considering. And this community needs to be looking at and considering and deliberating on these things because if we don't come up with a general consensus to what it means to be a Syracuse City School District family, if we don't come up with a consensus to what our uniforms are going to look like, if we don't come up with a consensus as to what the real expectations are, then where are we going to get when we're not going to go anywhere? So I'm going to keep having these conversations because that's how you know, line yourself up for progress. That's how you build strategy, and that's how we ultimately achieve success. So, that was just, a little bit of brainstorming on what we're talking about here and just my thoughts for the week. Um, like I said, I have a kid that I really care about at Franklin. Um, so I do like I talk to mom all the time. I'm on an emergency contact sheet. We brainstorm schools. We work on consciousness. We do a lot of stuff. So that's part of the reason why I'm highlighting this story tonight because we do have Franklin parents in this group. So I know this would be important for them to think about and consider. So, as well as for all of us, right? Because, like, I go to Delaware and things happen at Delaware all the time. The Delaware school gets locked down a lot. lockdowns, lock-ins, stay in place, whatever. There's gunshots over there. There's people running up and down the streets with guns and things happening on Fitch Street, and they don't make the news. But I do get notifications on my phone that those things have taken place that day, and they're really good about that. A phone call home and a letter home anytime it happens at Delaware, which kind of gives me the indication that it is something that's at the discretion of the principal, and that that's one of those inconsistency issues. So if notifying the parents afterwards is at the discretion of the principal, and it's the standard policy not to talk about it at all during the event, we really need to figure out what our parent position on these are and look for, implementing, advocating, changing, getting acknowledgement of, what parents want to see in that regard. Because up until this point, it's just kind of been one of those things that, there's been no room for. But we've made some room over the past year. So let me know what you think. And the next board meeting is on the 12th. So that's 1 week from today. Wednesday. It's a general business meeting. Um, I don't know if it'll be live streamed that night, but I should have some footage of it for you shortly after. So if you can't make it to the 4:30, 5:30, or 5:30, 6:30 event, it's really like 6:30 by the time they actually get into the room. You should be able to see that. I'm going to be working on uh, catching more of that footage live so we can catch up on that and hear it straight uh, from the Board of Education, since that seems to be the only time they want to speak in public. But with that being said, I will go ahead and say goodnight. It's getting late, and talk to you guys soon.